If an avoidant does this, they're never coming back. There's something we don't talk about enough when it comes to relationships with avoidant partners. You might be holding out hope, believing that if you just say the right thing, if you give them enough time, if you prove your love one more time, they'll come back, that they'll see how good it was, that they'll miss you. But here's the truth. If an avoidant person does this one thing, they're never coming back. What is it? They make peace with your absence. Not the loud kind, not the messy kind with screaming matches or dramatic exits. I'm talking about the quiet, cold goodbye. The one where they detach, disappear, and rationalize it all in their head. When they can leave without looking back. Not because it didn't matter, but because emotional closeness always felt threatening. Avoidants don't thrive in connection. They thrive in distance. And when they start telling themselves that being with you meant losing themselves, that closeness was suffocating, that love was pressure, they don't come back to renegotiate that belief. They double down on it. So what does this mean for you? It means stop waiting for their return like it's a matter of when. It might never happen. Not because you weren't enough, but because they've convinced themselves that needing no one is safer than risking intimacy again. And here's the kicker. It's not your job to heal that. It's theirs. If they've chosen distance over connection, if they've cut you out and shown no sign of accountability or self-reflection, that silence is their answer. Don't fill the gap with your effort. Don't chase a closed door. Sometimes the most powerful form of self-love is believing someone when they walk away, not making it your mission to prove they were wrong. You deserve someone who sees love as a safe place, not a battlefield. When someone with an avoidant attachment style decides to leave a relationship and emotionally detaches, it often marks a turning point that isn't temporary. It's not just a break or a need for space. It's the beginning of emotional closure for them. The most telling sign that they're not coming back is when they achieve a sense of peace or relief from your absence. This doesn't usually come with drama or emotional outbursts. In fact, it's often marked by silence, distance, and a calm that can be incredibly confusing to the person left behind. Avoidant individuals have a unique relationship with intimacy. While they may enjoy closeness in short bursts, sustained emotional intimacy often triggers deep discomfort. When that discomfort grows, they start to interpret the relationship as a threat to their independence or emotional safety. Rather than express that vulnerability, they slowly begin to detach, pulling back emotionally, then physically. They may still be present in the relationship, but they're no longer in it. By the time they walk away, they've already rehearsed their exit in their mind. They've spent weeks, maybe months, convincing themselves that leaving is the right decision, that being alone is better, that needing someone is weakness. When they finally act on that internal dialogue, it isn't impulsive, it's final. They make peace with the idea of not having you in their life, not because they didn't care, but because caring feels unsafe. They mentally rewrite the story of the relationship to justify the distance. They might say things like, it wasn't working, or I lost myself, or even, I need to find my own path. These are often less about you and more about their fear of losing control. As this detachment becomes self-protective, it creates a barrier that keeps you on the outside no matter how much you try to reach in. The hardest part is accepting that what looks like peace from their side is actually the shutting down of emotional access. They're not looking back, not because they hate you, not because they've moved on to someone else, but because they've already decided that closeness comes with too high a cost. When an avoidant person can walk away and feel emotionally regulated without you, it means they've finalized a choice, and they rarely revisit it. Especially if returning would mean confronting the vulnerability they've worked so hard to avoid. When an avoidant partner walks away, The way they experience separation is fundamentally different from how someone with a secure or anxious attachment might. What's often heartbreaking for the person left behind is realizing that the avoidant doesn't seem to miss them, or at least not in a way that inspires reconnection. While others might feel drawn to revisit memories, reach out, or reflect on the love they've lost, an avoidant is more likely to retreat inward and focus on regaining a sense of autonomy. And this isn't because the relationship meant nothing to them, but because missing someone requires an openness to longing. And that kind of emotional vulnerability is what they tend to avoid most. Avoidants typically feel overwhelmed when emotional closeness reaches a certain threshold. The intimacy that feels natural and nourishing to someone else can start to feel suffocating or intrusive to them. So when they leave, they don't tend to experience the aching absence in the same way. Instead, they may feel relief that they don't have to constantly manage emotional expectations, relief that they don't have to explain their inner world or navigate uncomfortable conversations about feelings. That relief can easily be mistaken for indifference, but it's actually a coping mechanism, a way for them to return to emotional equilibrium. Their version of missing you might not look like reaching out or trying to reconnect. It may be buried under rationalizations about why the relationship had to end. They might convince themselves that they weren't right for you, or that you were too emotional, or that the timing just didn't work. These justifications help them feel in control, help them avoid the discomfort of regret. In some cases, they'll even create emotional distance by focusing on your flaws, amplifying every moment that made them feel pressured or exposed, so they don't have to confront the vulnerability that real missing entails. In contrast, you might find yourself caught in waves of grief and confusion, asking how someone who claimed to love you could move on so quickly. But for an avoidant, the withdrawal began long before the breakup. By the time they physically leave, they've already emotionally checked out. That gap in timing explains the emotional mismatch you feel. While you're still in the thick of your pain, they're already stabilizing themselves with distance. It's not that you didn't, it's that closeness became too much, and their way of surviving that is to emotionally shut the door before they ever reach the point of truly feeling your absence. When someone with an avoidant attachment style leaves a relationship, it's easy to assume that their withdrawal is a reflection of your shortcomings. You start to question everything. Was I too needy, too emotional? Did I push them away by caring too much? This line of thinking becomes a trap, pulling you deeper into self-blame and over-analysis. But the truth is, their avoidance isn't about you. It's about them and their internal wiring, often shaped long before you ever entered the picture. Avoidant individuals tend to struggle with emotional intimacy because somewhere along the way they learn that vulnerability isn't safe. Whether through inconsistent caregiving, emotional neglect, or early life experiences that taught them to rely only on themselves, they formed a belief that closeness leads to pain. So as adults, even when they want love, they find it hard to stay connected once emotional stakes get high. What looks like indifference or coldness is often a defense mechanism, an effort to maintain control and avoid the perceived risks of emotional exposure. When you start getting closer to an avoidant partner, it can trigger a kind of inner alarm for them. That alarm tells them they're losing their independence, their emotional space, or even their identity. Instead of communicating this fear, they pull back, become distant, or shut down. This behavior has nothing to do with your worth or how lovable you are. In fact, the more emotionally available and loving you are, the more it might intensify their discomfort. Why? Because it confronts them with everything they want, but don't believe they can safely hold. This is why it's so damaging to internalize their retreat as a judgment of your value. It's not that you were too much, it's that they don't have the capacity or the readiness to hold space for the level of emotional presence you brought. Their avoidance is a protective shield, not a verdict on your character. You could have done everything right in the relationship and still ended up with the same result. Why? Because unless someone with avoidant tendencies has done the inner work to recognize, challenge their patterns, they will default to distancing behaviors when intimacy becomes too real. It's not your responsibility to shrink yourself to make them feel safer. Their reaction to closeness is a reflection of their fear, not your failure. And understanding this is essential if you want to let go of the shame and self-doubt that so often follow in the wake of being left by someone emotionally unavailable. When someone with an avoidant attachment style walks away and refuses to engage in open or honest dialogue, it's incredibly painful. You're left with so many questions and no answers. Your mind spins, searching for closure. Something that will help you understand what went wrong, what changed, or why the love that once felt real seems to have vanished overnight. But here's the truth that's hardest to accept. When someone walks away and leaves silence in their place, that silence is your closure. We often think closure is a conversation. We believe that if we just talk things through one more time, hear their side, or get that final explanation, we'll be able to move on. But avoidants rarely offer that. Their way of leaving is often quiet, abrupt, and emotionally distant. And that's not an accident. It's a form of self-protection. Having a deep, emotional conversation about the end of a relationship would require them to sit in vulnerability, take ownership, and acknowledge the impact of their withdrawal. For someone who avoids emotional exposure, that level of honesty feels overwhelming. What's more confusing is when they don't technically ghost you, but still refuse to engage in anything meaningful. They may respond with surface-level politeness, avoid your questions, or act like nothing ever happened. That kind of emotional evasion can make you feel crazy, like you're overreacting or imagining things. But you're not. You're just dealing with someone who would rather preserve their emotional distance than give you the clarity you deserve. This is where many people get stuck, chasing understanding from someone who has no intention of providing it. They send one more message, ask for one more conversation, try to appeal to the avoidance logic or compassion, but what they don't realize is that every unanswered text, every vague response, every deflection is a message. It's saying, I'm not going to meet you emotionally. I'm not going to give you more. That silence and avoidance is their answer. It's hard to accept because it feels incomplete, but closure doesn't always come in a neat, satisfying package. Sometimes it comes from recognizing someone's inability or unwillingness to meet you where you are and deciding not to keep standing in the doorway they closed behind them. Waiting for them to give you peace only delays your own. The moment you stop trying to decode their silence is the moment you begin to reclaim your power. When someone leaves you and shows no intention of working through their issues, no desire to communicate, and no willingness to meet you emotionally, you're left with a decision. Keep hoping they'll come back, or choose to respect yourself enough to move forward. It's tempting to hold on. You replay every moment, every conversation, every sign of connection and chemistry, hoping it meant as much to them as it did to you. But at some point, you have to ask yourself a harder question. What am I really waiting for? If the person who left isn't doing the work to change, if they're not reaching out, not reflecting, not taking accountability, then hoping for their return becomes less about love and more about your fear of letting go. And that fear is powerful. It whispers lies, that they're the only one who truly understood you, that you'll never feel that kind of connection again, that maybe if you just wait long enough, they'll realize what they lost. But the longer you wait for someone who isn't showing up, the more you abandon yourself. Choosing self-respect means recognizing when love is no longer mutual. It means accepting that someone can have feelings for you and still not be ready, still not be capable of giving you the relationship you deserve. It's not enough for someone to miss you. They have to be willing to show up consistently and meet you in the vulnerability that real love requires. If they're not doing that, you have to be brave enough to stop romanticizing potential and start honoring your own reality. There's deep power in saying, I'm done chasing, not out of bitterness, but out of love for yourself. Because real love, the kind you deserve, isn't something you have to beg for. It doesn't require you to constantly prove your worth or carry the emotional weight for two people. It's reciprocal. It's grounded. It's safe. The person who's right for you won't make you feel like a burden for wanting connection. They won't disappear when things get real. They'll want to understand you, not escape you. And they'll view love not as something to run from, but as something to lean into. So if you've been waiting, hoping, overanalyzing every word, every moment, trying to understand how someone could love you one day and leave the next, let this be your moment of clarity. When an avoidant chooses distance over growth, silence over honesty, and relief over reconnection, they're telling you something loud and clear. Even if they never say it out loud, they're not coming back. And you don't need them to, because you deserve a love that doesn't make you guess, doesn't make you shrink, and doesn't disappear the moment things get real. You deserve someone who meets you in the middle, who chooses closeness over comfort, who sees your emotional depth not as a threat, but as a gift. Closure isn't about what they say, it's about what you decide. You can close the chapter without waiting for them to write the ending. You can heal without their apology, and you can move forward without needing to look back. Thank you for being here. Thank you for having the courage to face the hard truths, to choose your healing over your history, and to keep showing up for yourself even when it hurts. If this message spoke to you, know that you're not alone. You're not too much. You're not too emotional. You're just ready for a love that actually stays. Take care of yourself. Be kind to your heart, and remember, the love you're looking for starts with the way you love you. Until next time, thank you for listening. So if someone left and hasn't looked back, don't stand there waiting for them to return. Let that door close, turn inward, rebuild your boundaries, reclaim your energy, because the more you choose yourself, the less willing you'll be to settle for someone who didn't.